we have the right to inhabit our land, to use our land.
Our culture is about sustaining that relationship with the plants, the animals, in a forest.
I did start drawing a lot in the residential school, really not knowing my culture and traditions.
And I'm very proud to be here today. My name is Halos, and this is my squeal.
Hello and welcome again to Voices of Shishalh. I know you're not going to tease me on that one, Chief. Today's show is very interesting for a number of reasons, and I think, Chief, when you originally sat down with Perry Bellegarde, who's the new AFN, Assembly of First Nations leader, you probably were thinking to yourself that he had a big task ahead, because there was some debate whether the AFN was going to survive after Sean Atleo, not because of him, but after, because there were big questions. The Prime Minister had cut back the funding severely. Many chiefs were saying, hey, should we not gather around treaties instead of gathering around Aboriginal collections? And the AFN represents 639 First Nations groups. And when they gathered in Winnipeg to elect a guy from Saskatchewan, all bets were off. And I thought I'd then ask you, did you have some doubt about his ability to unite this group one more time under his leadership?
When we met with Perry Bellegarde in November, he was a candidate, and we had met in Vancouver. And during that session and during that interview with him, we were convinced that he was the right person to bring the chiefs together, unite the chiefs across Canada. And because he came from mid-Canada, we thought that him committing to the West Coast bands was a major factor in determining how we were going to vote. And he, at that meeting, committed to coming back to British Columbia to meet with the Shishalh Indian Band, because he knows and understands that we are at the forefront of the political arena in terms of settling things with the government. And we, being the first self-governing band, he knew and understand and recognized that fact. And he's promoting that. So we have no reluctance in promoting his leadership.
Well, our chief sat down with Perry Bellegarde a week ago in a restaurant on Squamish land, as a matter of fact. And that interview, I thought, was illustrative of the kind of leaders you both are, because I think he revealed himself in many ways to you, and it showed a trust. And this is what that interview went like.
I want to welcome our new National Chief, Perry Bellegarde, and I'm really happy and honored that he's taken the time and the commitment to come to the West Coast, right here in Vancouver. Right now we're on the Squamish territory, and I'm happy, and I want to welcome the Chief here today. We have a great honor that he's presented us, and we want to honor him back by some other comments later on the show. So welcome, Chief.
Thanks so much, Chief. Thank you for the invitation.
So I understand that you're the newly elected the National Chief, and what has transpired over the last year or so has been kind of devastating and kind of split the First Nations. The chiefs across Canada are kind of feeling that. And I think the chiefs are looking to you to unite us, to bring us together. And how do you plan to do that?
Well, one of the biggest things that always unites our people, Chief, is going into each other's territory and showing that respect and building those alliances and relationships through ceremony. And that's one of the biggest things that really unites us, is when we come back to our traditions, we always have those teachings of truth and honesty and love and respect and humility, courage and wisdom. Those 7 sacred teachings, putting those at the forefront will bring our people back together.
Right. So the voices of the chiefs will be united. And I understand that you've recently met the Prime Minister, and how did that meeting roll out?
Well, again, it was part of my 100-day plan, Chief. I wanted to meet all the leaders of all the national parties. You know, Prime Minister Harper, of course, with the Conservatives, Minister Justin Trudeau with the Liberals, and as well Thomas Mulcair at the NDP and Elizabeth May. And so I met with them all as part of my plan to put our agenda and our rights agenda back into the forefront. And even with the Prime Minister, the issues that I put forward dealing with because of the Chilcotin case, making sure that Aboriginal rights and title are at the forefront. Looking at new ways to implement treaty rights, that we have. We have a sacred agreement with the Crown. Looking at removing of the 2% cap that's been in place, developing a new fiscal framework, even embracing new concepts like revenue sharing. And even, of course, we brought up the education piece, Bill C-33, and of course, missing murdered Indigenous women and girls. And we were putting these all on the forefront with him. But the response back really wasn't what I expected from the Prime Minister in terms of commitment to these issues. And so we have a lot of work to do in terms of repairing the relationship and moving it forward.
Right. Understand you were in Vancouver on Saturday at St. Valentine's Day, and you had the opportunity to march with the women in the case of the missing woman.
Yes, that was a very powerful experience, and we were presented with a talking stick in December, and Chief Shane Gottfredson and Chief Doug Kelly, through ceremony, were presented a talking stick from the people on the downtown east side, the Carver and the women there, and they presented it to our elder at the AFN meeting in Winnipeg in December, and then after my election it was presented to me. To carry this stick to all of the meetings across Canada that are dealing with the issue of missing murdered Indigenous women and girls. And so I had that stick with me, and I brought it back thinking that I was to present it back here at the downtown east side. So we marched for 6 hours with the women, and we stopped at every site where there was a woman that was either killed or went missing, in the downtown east side. It was such a powerful and moving experience because as we went through this ceremony, the grandfather, the Eagles were around, and everybody would look up, and the songs and the ceremony, and even just listening to the women and their testimony was a very moving experience. And it just shows again the need to keep pushing for this national public inquiry into missing Indigenous women and girls. There's something wrong with society, when this happens so much that against First Nations women and girls, that 4 times the statistics are just alarming. So it was such a moving experience just to be part of that, and committed to a number of them to make sure that we have this roundtable coming up at the end of February.
Yeah, I'm glad you really came out and showcased that. Shishalh people had some members in that march, and the Shishalh people had victims also, and that's why we were represented there. But I'm really happy that you brought that up, which leads us into our question of our residential school court case. I know that's basically one of the reasons why you're here today.
Yes.
To support that effort, because Shishalh and Kamloops are trying to send the message nationally that we need the support, we need the recognition across Canada that this court case is going to bring the decision that's going to come probably in April. And we've formally invited you to that celebration. We have some other celebrations that we're having at the end of March that we're hoping that you're going to be able to attend. And one of them is the changing of our hospital name, which is, once again is precedent setting for First Nations when we've donated land for regional hospitals like that. So the recognition is coming from the province, and the ministers are going to be there, and we really want you to be there.
Chief, thank you for the kind invitation, and just to acknowledge your leadership, and as well Chief Shane Gottfredson on the Day Scholar class action suit. You're not only doing it on behalf of your citizens and your nation and your membership, but all of the First Nations people that have endured that suffering. They did attend, and it really is a cultural genocide. And the Crown has an obligation to respond and respect it and to deal with that issue. It's outstanding. And it's something that, again, I applaud your leadership on. And it's always developing. If the political strategy doesn't work, then you also have to look at the legal strategy, to bring about justice and to deal with this issue. So I commend you for your leadership on that, both of you, chiefs.
Yeah. I think our interest goes way beyond that in terms of how the healing takes place. If we get a positive decision in April, then our people are going to start to look toward not only healing of our people because it's intergenerational, but the education. I think the education department, it plays a huge component of not just for our people, but our surrounding communities. How that affected our communities, how it affected the generations that come. And I know this goes right across Canada in terms of the effect of Native people. And the stories are multiple.
You know, Chief, I totally agree. The points we always make as First Nations leaders, there's two things that really had a huge impact on First Nations people that really killed our families and our communities and our nations. One of them was the imposition of this residential school system upon our people, which was cultural genocide. You know, that everything good about being a First Nations person was taught to us that it's no good anymore. Your language is no good. Your ceremonies are no good. And you have to become like brown white people, you know, and fit into the system. So it was cultural genocide. That's one thing. And then when our children go into that system, it's like when they come out of that system, when you tack on all this mental abuse, this physical abuse, this verbal abuse, this sexual abuse, they're not healthy as individuals. They're not proud of their identity, of who they are, where they come from. You know, so they're not going to know how to raise a healthy family because they're not healthy as individuals. And we still feel the intergenerational effects of that. That's one big thing. The other thing that happened was the imposition of the Indian Act. You know, that really controlled us right from day one from the womb to the tomb, a lot of our people say. The Indian Act imposed a foreign system of governance on our people. So those two things. And we have to start rising up, healing from the residential schools and the intergenerational effects. But we also have to start finding ways to move beyond the Indian Act. And again, you've done that for 28 years, so that's a positive thing. We just need to get the other 600 plus reserves to think outside that box, that Indian Act box. And so that's a challenge we have in front of us as First Nations people.
Yeah, that's part of the process we've been going through for 28 years, is that even the electoral system that we're under is an Indian Act that was forced upon our people. Previous to that, it was done by hereditary chiefs. And I'm proud to say that I am a hereditary chief, and so is Gary Feschuk, who heads the residential school court case. So we're bringing back that culture back to our people, with not only how we picked our leaders, but taking that responsibility as leaders. You know, many communities across Canada face people who are very suspicious. The untrustworthy mindset is still there. That's something we've got to overcome nationally, I think.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. You know, government has done a good job at communicating to people that all chiefs are crooked, and all chiefs and councils aren't there for the people but for themselves. And we got to start breaking down that myth. You know, that our people, our chiefs, they don't get the big pensions, you know, that the members of parliament get. You know, they don't have all the benefits that the MPs get, you know. I know chiefs that have served for 25, 30 years, and once they're done, they're out. You know, they're back to almost nothing.
That's right. That's true.
So we've got to get that information out.
Yeah,
as well.
I've been there, done that. Just to change the subject to a little more pragmatic matter, understand you've met with our premier recently.
Yes.
And how did that meeting go?
It went good. I'm going to say good for the first meeting, Chief. It's again part of my plan is to meet with all the federal government leaders, party leaders, but with all the premiers as well. And I'm trying to be consistent in my approach, in my messaging to them all. Because we have this Council of the Federation meeting coming up. Every July, the premiers get together, called the Council of the Federation. And as National Chief, I will be part of those meetings. So I wanted to have, we met with the 7 or 8 premiers already, collectively as a whole. And now I'm doing the one-on-ones. And I'm trying to be consistent in my messaging on 3 fronts. One is to establish a process within each of their provincial territories between the provincial premiers and their cabinets and First Nations leaders. Call it an intergovernmental affairs process, call it a tier 1, tier 2 process, call it a bilateral process. But it's having the First Nations chiefs and leaders have access to the premier and the council on a regular basis to deal with issues like the economy, like resource revenue share. In light of the Chilcotin case, what is this government doing to respect and recognize Aboriginal rights and title? You know, so they have to have a plan and strategy to create economic certainty. So that's one piece on the economy, revenue sharing. making sure there's a proper intergovernmental process between the premiers and First Nations leaders in every province. So I'm meeting with each premier. That's one piece I bring up. The other one is on the education system. And 2 or 3 points on this one. Because so many of our people reside off reserves, we're trying to say, why doesn't the curriculum reflect and start changing the curriculum to teach Aboriginal rights and title in the school systems? Why does not the curriculum start reflecting First Nations languages? Why can't the Premier and Cabinet declare Indigenous languages as official languages of the territory, of the state? So all of these things we put forward, is to start working from the economy to education, and of course, ongoing support and action regarding missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. So those 3 fronts I'm trying to get in place of all the premiers. And when we meet with them in July again, I'm going to say, Premier Christy Clark, I met with you. Premier Brad Wall, I met with you. Premier Jim Prentice, I met with you, and we raised these 3 issues. Now, what are the next steps as we keep moving these files forward? So it's starting, but we still got a long way to go to see that action.
Yeah, and I think shishalh understand that process, and that's why we've been preparing for the last 28 years. We've demonstrated that we can govern. We are part of the regional governorship in our territory, and we think that the Premier could use shishalh self-government as a model to bring a model forward that would work in regional districts across BC. So we're hoping that you would bring that message to her once we meet again, and we're going to continue to strive to meet with the MPs and the MLAs to use shishalh as the model. That we're ready, we're prepared, and we're ready to go forward.
No, I'd be, again, next time we see her and sit down with her, I'll definitely bring that forward, Chief.
Great. I want to thank you for that. So once again, I want to thank you, Chief, for coming. We do have a present in recognition of your commitment to us, and I can't read that, but maybe you could want to repeat that again, Norm. But
thank you.
It is a travel canoe paddle that our former chiefs have presented to our national chief. Welcome him to the Squamish Nation, if not the shishalh Nation.
Chief, and it's a big honor for me. Thank you so much. And it reads, in coastal First Nations cultures, the paddle is very significant. It is symbolic of the journeys made from far off lands by visitors to our shores. It represents the coming together of diverse groups. Even more so, it represents the partnerships we commit to in our collective direction. When one paddles along with us at our side, together, we are working toward the same goal, committed to the same vision, and heading for the same place. When we offer a paddle as a gift, it is to say we pull together as one. It's a big honor, Chief. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you. And once again, I wanted to mention that this is from both the Kamloops Band and the shishalh Band, and we're very happy to present it to our national chief. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chief.
Thank you.
Chief, I congratulate you. You drew him out. He is a politician. He has to watch what he said. Of all the things he said and he spoke about, do you think he is keenly interested in his contribution, his legacy at this time?
Yeah, I think he's really totally committed to reconciling with the government, reconciling with the nations across Canada, and I think he's the proper man that can do that. So we're very confident in his leadership.
That's a pretty strong endorsation from one of the most respected chiefs in this country and the man that's hosting this show, Chief Calvin Craigan. We'll be back after these messages.
I thank you for your patience. I thank you for your endurance. I want to thank also my people who took the weekend off to come to you and share their culture, to share who they are. The purpose is accomplished. In my generation, I'm 70 winters now. I was probably one of the last of my generation to live in that manner, to live the natural life, a lifestyle that was taken from us. So once again, I want to thank my staff for being patient, for all the hard work, for giving up their Saturday. But that's what we're all about. We're about sharing. We're about helping one another. There are words in our language for that. And the next time when I meet with you, we'll be sharing more of that language. I know that there are 100 questions, maybe 1,000 questions out there. But I've met with some of the spokesmen from your community, from Pender Harbour to Half Moon Bay. Those committees I've agreed to meet with personally. And I wish to also tell you that I will be personally involved on the OCP here at Pender Harbour, because I take it very seriously, the values and the interests of all our people. When I say all of our people, I mean all of you. And I was speaking not only on behalf of my people, but the people in the Pender Harbour community, Half Moon Bay. So this was a chance for us to get engaged, to get to know one another. And I'm happy the way it rolled out. I'm happy that we were here today. So now, once again, I want to invite you to break bread with us, and my council and my staff are here to answer any questions pertaining to the future of this territory, the future of my people. Thank you.
I thought it was very informative and a great way for me to learn more about the Shishalh First Nation, their culture and their history. I thought it was really important that the public know that this is a nation of sharing, and I thought that that was a message that was definitely well spoken and came across very clearly, that they're not looking to create barriers. They want to share and open up the dialogue, and I thought that that was really important.
I thought it was wonderful. I thought it was really generous of the Shishalh Nation to come and share so much history and so much information about traditions with us. And I know around me I heard a lot of people grumbling because they thought it was going to be an open mic and they would get to express their opinions. But I think we aren't a storytelling society anymore, us non-native people, and we're used to everything being bam, 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 and we're used to having the right to stand up and say what we want to say instead of just politely opening our hearts and listening. So I was just really glad to be here, and in fact, in the break, I went up to Chief Calvin and invited him to build a longhouse on the property where I live. And I have 3 other friends who would like longhouses as well. So I think it's really good. It was a real honor to be talked to in this way today, to have that sharing.
I think that this is very encouraging. I think that seeing First Nations reach out to the community, we all share this land, and I think it's very honorable and generous of them basically to come forward to talk about their aspirations and what they would like to do. And again, it gets away from this carrying the big stick and basically looking to cooperate with the local communities. And I think the restoration of the fisheries and our natural resources is very honorable. And more important than anything, I think if you take a look at it on a grander scale, this is local as opposed to global. And I think that looking at our survival as a community really requires that we be looking at our community and how we utilize our resources basically for the future of future generations here. So I commend the chief and the band for reaching out to us and giving us this opportunity to come and listen to their side of the story and to share and break bread with us. So it's wonderful. Thanks.
You'd have to say, Chief, that you were really the star of the show in Pender Harbour, no question about it. The remarks those people made really must make you feel good, because the more people hear your story and the story of your nation and your people, the more they understand where you fit in. And you have to say that it went probably as good as it could have, considering that there's some contentious issues.
Yeah, I think the purpose of our meeting with that community was to make them more aware of just who we are and what we mean to be involved in the community. We wanted to have them understand and know that we were not a threat as we create and recreate the presence in that territory. And they need to know what's in our plan to achieve that presence in that territory and how we're going to do that, how we're going to accomplish that in the very near future. Because the Shishalh Band is going to be moving ahead to reclaim their territory, to reclaim their jurisdiction, and to recreate their presence in that territory. So they need to understand that we're not a threat, but we think we're going to be a conduit to progression of what could happen in the future, not just for our native community, but the community as a whole.
So do you feel that it's misunderstood how much input and how much effort you put into that area while not necessarily appearing physically in the background? You're one of the reasons why there's an environment there and that it can be cleansed and it isn't destroyed.
Well, they have to understand that what the governments have undertaken over the last 150 years, it literally contaminated that whole area. And other areas in our community, other areas in our territory, all completed and done by people like BC Forest, etc. Department of Fisheries and Oceans not taking the responsibility to be the stewards of that territory. So we have, as a band, as our government has to step up and take that responsibility of being the stewards in our land. We want them to participate in reclaiming that land, reclaiming those resources, whether it's done just on the foreshore, whether it's done in the watersheds. And that's the main issue for all the community members, especially when it comes to protecting the watersheds. We've got to all take that responsibility so that our future grandchildren will have clean water, clean air, and that they have a right to all those natural resources. And we're willing to share those resources with them.
And the best test of whether or not you were good the first time around is whether you get a second invite. And I understand that you have one.
Yeah, we've committed to meeting with them back into the community at Pender Harbour on March 30th. And they will set up the agenda. Sid Quinn and I will be doing the answering of the questions at that arena, and I'm hoping that it's going to be positive. We are willing to share. We are very transparent, and we have no fear in sharing that information with them.
So that's our show for this week. These are extraordinary times for the Shishalh Nation, its people, and I think that when they look back in history, they're going to say that you really made an incredible impact on your people. You were the right chief at the right time, and you're almost in a state of grace. And I always give you the last word because, of course, you're the chief. So in this incredible period of time with you as the leader, how do you view this and your role?
Well, my role is that I really understand the vision of our forefathers. And the vision of our forefathers was that they wanted to be not only independent, but they wanted to have their jurisdiction, their rights, their rightful place within our land. And how do we accomplish that in this modern age when we're surrounded by other communities, by other peoples? That is the challenge. That is the challenge we have to overcome. And the only way we're going to overcome that is collaborating, negotiating, and reconciling with not only the governments, but the people who are living as our guests in our territory.
That's it from the Longhouse. Thank you for watching. This is Voices of Shishalh. We'll see you again next time.
I did start drawing a lot in the residential school, really not knowing my culture and traditions.
and I'm very proud to be here today. My name is Halos, and this is my squeal.